We are living in the midst of what is conceivably perhaps the best danger in the course of our life, to worldwide academic instruction. An enormous instructive emergency. As of March 28, 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic is making more than 1.6 billion youngsters and youth be out of school in 161 nations. This is near 80% of the world's enlisted understudies. We were at that point encountering a worldwide inclining emergency. The same number of understudies were in school, yet were not learning the crucial abilities required forever. The World Bank's Learning Destitution Indicator, the level of youngsters who can't read and understand at age 10, remained at 53% of kids in low and middle income nations before the episode began. This pandemic can possibly decline these results much more on the off chance that we don't act quick. What would be advisable for us to be stressed over in this period of emergency that may immediately affect kids and youth? It may be misfortunes in learning, expanded dropout rates, or kids missing their most significant supper of the day. In addition, most nations have extremely inconsistent training frameworks, and these negative effects will be felt lopsidedly by poor kids. At the point when it downpours, it pours for them. Learning. Beginning the school year late or interfering with it in the event that they live in the southern or northern side of the equator totally disturbs the lives of numerous kids, their folks, and instructors. A great deal should be possible to, in any event, diminish the effect through remote learning systems. More extravagant nations are more ready to move to internet learning systems, despite the fact that with a great deal of exertion and difficulties for educators and guardians. In center salary or less fortunate nations, the circumstances blended, and on the off chance that we don't act properly, the tremendous disparity of chances that exist, terrible and inadmissible to begin with, will be intensified. Numerous youngsters don't have a work area, books, web network, a PC at home, or steady guardians. Others do. What we have to maintain a strategic distance from or limit, however much as could reasonably be expected, is for those distinctions in chances to grow and make the emergency have a significantly bigger negative impact on poor youngsters' learning. Luckily, we are seeing a great deal of innovativeness in numerous nations. As it should be, numerous services of training are concerned that depending solely on online procedures will suggest arriving and just kids from happier families. The fitting methodology in many nations is to utilize the conceivable conveyance modes with the framework that exists today. Utilize online apparatuses to guarantee the exercise plans, recordings, instructional exercises, and different assets are accessible for certain understudies and likely most educators. Yet additionally, web recordings and different assets that require less information utilization. Working with media transmission organizations To apply zero-rate approaches can likewise encourage learning material to be downloaded on a cell phone, which more understudies are probably going to have. Radio and television are additionally exceptional amazing assets. The favorable position we have today is that through informal communities, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Zoom, or SMS, services of training can discuss successfully with guardians and educators and give rules, guidelines, and structure to the learning procedure, utilizing content conveyed by radio or television. Remote learning isn't just about web-based learning, yet about blended media learning with the target of coming to whatever number understudies as could be allowed today. Remaining locked in. Keeping up the commitment of youngsters, especially youthful optional school understudies, is basic. Dropout rates are still high in numerous nations, and an extensive stretch of separation can bring about a further increment. Going to class isn't just about learning math and science, yet additionally about social connections and distributed communications. It is tied in with figuring out how to be a resident and creating social aptitudes. That is the reason it is imperative to remain associated with the school using any and all means. For all understudies, this is likewise an opportunity to create socio-enthusiastic aptitudes and become familiar with how to add to society as a resident. The job of guardians and family, which has consistently been critical, will be basic in that task. In this way, a great deal of the assistance that services of training give, working through broad communications, ought to likewise go to guardians. Radio, television, SMS messages would be able to be utilized to give tips and exhortation to them on the most proficient method to more readily bolster their youngsters. Dinners. In numerous pieces of the world, school taking care of projects give kids their most nutritious feast of the day. They are fundamental for the subjective turn of the event and prosperity. These projects are intricate, strategic, and managerial undertakings. It is difficult, yet nations should discover the best approach to give those dinners utilizing the school structures in a composed manner, network structures or organizers, or, if necessary, circulate legitimately to the families. On the off chance that conveying suppers or food isn't achievable strategically, money move projects ought to be extended and executed to remunerate the guardians. Arranging is required. However, one must be prepared to deftly modify plans. As the data we have about the conceivable ways of the pandemic change step by step, affected by the vulnerability around which relief estimates nations are taking. The way toward reviving schools may be progressive, as specialists will need to diminish agglomeration or the chance of a second rush of the pandemic, which can influence a few nations. In that dubious setting, it may be smarter to settle on choices expecting a more drawn-out, as opposed to a shorter situation. Fortunately, a significant number of the upgrades, activities, and ventures that educational systems should make may have a possible durable impact. A few nations will have the option to build their instructors' computerized abilities. Radio and television slots will perceive their key job in supporting national training objectives and ideally improve the nature of their programming, understanding their massive social obligation. Guardians will be increasingly engaged with their youngsters' instruction procedures and services of training, will have a much more clear comprehension of the holes and difficulties. For example, in network, equipment, combination of computerized devices in the educational plan, instructor's status that exist in utilizing innovation successfully and follow up on that. The entirety of this can fortify the future instruction framework in a nation. The strategic all-instruction frameworks is the equivalent. It is to be beaten. The learning emergency we were at that point living and react to the pandemic we are for the most part confronting. The task today is to diminish, however much as could reasonably be expected, the negative effect this pandemic will have on learning and tutoring, and expand on this experience to get back on a way of quicker improvement in learning. As instruction frameworks adapt to this emergency, they must also be thinking of how they can recover stronger, with a renewed sense of responsibility of all actors and with a better understanding and sense of urgency of the need to close the gap in opportunities and assuring that all children have the same chances for a quality education.